Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. I'm back in the building. My first Sunday Vibes in quite some time, actually.
A long time.
Yeah, unfortunately they've been coinciding with shoots I've been doing, but Doogie has been regularly here. How are you, mate?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, it's great to have you back on. I'm excited for today's episode. It's been a fantastic week of Champions League
Unbelievable.
action. I think one of the best weeks I can probably remember since that Liverpool-Barcelona, maybe Spurs-Ajax, that week in the semi-finals, in 2018-19. But this week has just been so good. The quality of goals in particular, just brilliant. Like picking out a goal of the week, you're probably going at Fede Valverde, but you could easily go
Foden.
Gvardiol as well was a brilliant goal. Last night, Rafinha's second, that cut volley was really nice as well. It's just been a brilliant week. And you must have been happy because PSG lost.
PSG lost. Everybody knows my mortal enemies. PSG, I always want them to fail, and they failed in the week, didn't they? Sorry, any PSG fans that are watching. But yeah, unbelievable amount of goals midweek. You know, the Premier League this season obviously seeing record numbers of goals. Premier League sides being involved in massively high-scoring games. But we're not here to talk about big numbers. Today we're here to talk about smaller numbers. We're looking for some bargain stars your club could potentially sign this coming summer. Now, we've set a limit of around 30 million, haven't we?
It's a little bit loose.
It's loose, guys. It's loose. We can't specifically value these players. It's guesswork, okay? But we are also kind of looking towards hidden gems rather than big standout names. There's a couple of names in here I'm pretty sure you're going to recognise, but
Definitely.
There's also a couple you might never have heard of. So me and Doogie have each brought 4 names to the table. We're going to run through them, have a little bit of debate where we think they could end up, and that'll be for today's episode.
Can't wait.
You want to go first, Dukes?
Yeah, why not? Why not? I'm going over to Italy, where one of the stories of the season, in a similar way to sort of Stuttgart in the Bundesliga, has been Bologna getting themselves into the top 4 picture. They are 3 points ahead of Roma at the moment. Daniele De Rossi has done amazing work with Roma, but Thiago Motta's Bologna, he's now being linked with Juventus. It feels like this is probably his final few games in charge of Bologna, but crucial to their rise this season, alongside Orsolini on the right wing, has been Riccardo Calafiori, their centre-back, 21-year-old centre-back, 6'2", a youth product of Roma. Actually, when I was doing a bit of background research to this, his career nearly never happened. He had a near career-ending injury at sort of 16, eventually recovered, made his debut for Roma in that COVID time, August 2020. I was watching the highlights of that earlier today. You just forget how weird football was like without any fans.
So
completely
bizarre,
soulless.
wasn't it?
Anyway, he wins a penalty on his debut, nearly scores a goal from range as well, but it's ruled out for the baller having already gone out of play, and it felt like, okay, this guy's kind of arrived. But as is often the way with young defenders, he had Mancini in front of him, he had Smalling in front of him. He struggled to break through at Roma, then gets sold to Basel, FC Basel, last summer, or the summer before last, I should say. Has 1 year in Basel, and then was persuaded, or Bologna were persuaded, on the basis of his performances there, where he did help FC Basel to the Conference League semi-finals last year, where they lost to Fiorentina, I think it was, and yeah, Bologna thought, we can definitely use this guy. He's left-footed. He can play at left-back. He can play as a centre-back as well. And he's been at Bologna this season and has just been a bit of a sensation, really. A load of Serie A analysts that I follow on Twitter have been raving about him. He's already having links to Juventus, which is,
stock trade,
unsurprisingly
dull,
going to happen. But yeah, signed for just €4 million. He has, proved himself to be a really adept reader of the game. I think that's his strongest suit. He often charges out the line, but he times his tackles perfectly. He's got a really nice change of pace as well. And yeah, he's part of a Bologna side that often leaves their defence quite exposed. They are the second most intense pressers in Serie A by passes per defensive action behind Napoli. But they are still just 4th for shots conceded per game. So Thiago Motta has got them really well drilled. They know when to chase up together in a similar way to probably what Christian Romero used to do at Atalanta. Calafiori kind of does that for Bologna, a little bit front-footed, and looks like he's got a great understanding of when to be when to go to ground, when to stay on his feet. He's won 64% of his challenges this season, 74% of his aerial duels. His passing is solid without being spectacular. Most of the progressive passes come from Remo Freuler, a little bit further forward, who was obviously hugely disappointing at Nottingham Forest last year, but back in Serie A has proven his worth again. And he's also been chased by Spurs. They've obviously used that market really effectively in the last 2-3 years with Kulusevski and Bentancur coming in. Calafiori, they do need another centre-back, Spurs. I'd love to see him go to the Premier League. I think being fourth choice at Spurs is probably a quite nice position for him to be right now, given the fact he's only had one really exceptional year in a top 5 league. But this is a guy that I think you're going to be hearing about for a while. And if it wasn't for Alessandro Bastoni being left-footed, being so adept at playing that left-sided centre-back role, I think Calafiori would have an outside chance of going to the Euros and potentially even starting too. So an exciting centre-back out of Italy.
How old is he?
21.
21. What value are we talking here, Dukes?
Well, so he's got a contract until 2027. He's currently valued at around 25 million euros, which is about 20 million pounds, maybe just less. So I think this is someone you could genuinely get for around 30 million pounds. So I've actually stuck to the deal end of the bargain too.
I think you're comfortably under budget there. Although I do have concerns that it's going to be the stock in trade. This guy ends up at Juventus. Follows Motta,
Quite possibly, but then he has been at Rome and not really had his look in. Does he want to try further afield? I'm not sure. Does he want to go
if
to
Motta goes there, though, that's the problem.
Yeah, I do see that as well.
Because Motta's going there. And it's the worst kept secret in football at the moment.
Yeah, and they do probably need another outstanding young centre-back. I think Gatti's recovered well from a difficult start to the season. Danilo's not getting any younger.
And they might lose Bremer as well.
Bremer's got a really gettable release clause. I think off the top of my head it's around 50 million euros.
Yeah.
So maybe he'll be ending up at Juventus, but definitely one to keep an eye on this summer.
All right, I've gone a little bit further afield for my first one. I'm going to start with Roony Bardghji. I'm going to call him Rooney for the purposes of this, to be honest with you, because the second name pronunciation there, I think I've butchered it. It might be Bardghji. Not a particularly expert Syrian name pronouncer, because of course he was born in Kuwait. I know he represents Sweden, but Kuwait, where he's from, grew up there. Moved over with his parents, or with his mum actually. His dad stayed in Kuwait when he was very, very young, and has kind of grown through the Swedish ranks initially to an extremely high level and high profile talent. I think it's fair to say, really, he has the biggest profile of talent emerging from Sweden probably since Zlatan. We've seen the likes of Alexander Isak, we've seen Dejan Kulusevski come through, but not necessarily that individual superstar sort of status within the country, whereas Rooney definitely has that. And it's not like he spent loads of time in Sweden playing his football. Of course, he was at Malmo for a year, but he left for Copenhagen. I think the main reason behind that was probably because the Copenhagen Academy is just a little bit of a step up. And really, he has been blockbuster since he's been there. He's kind of been unfairly labelled as like the Swedish Messi, and it's never what you want, is it?
No, definitely not.
That title of the whatever Messi always drags people down. It just flat out does. So he's unfortunate to kind of have that sort of moniker on his back, because his playing style is a little bit like a Messi. It isn't Messi, but it's that left-footed, plays on the right-hand side, maybe not the fastest and most physical, but has that sort of explosive ability in close control, great shooting ability. And since he burst onto the scene at 16 in the Copenhagen first team, as the youngest ever Copenhagen player, he's gone from strength to strength. This season has been a real standout season, despite the fact Copenhagen haven't been crushing it in the Danish top flight. He has had moments of genius. We saw him against Manchester United, where he really put his name forward, didn't we? To score the equaliser at 3-3. Fantastic finish. Changed the game when he came on there. He isn't named after Wayne Rooney, by the way. That is like a bit of a fallacy. Yeah, because he has a brother called Ryan as well, and his dad's a massive Man United fan. And there was kind of a rumour going around, wasn't there, that his brother's named after Giggs. He's named after Wayne. It's not the case. That's just one of his names. And I think he's actually a Barcelona fan, or grew up kind of idolising Messi. So there's lots of photos of him in Barcelona shirts. Yeah, he was actually on trial at Tottenham as well when he was 12.
Wow.
But didn't make the grade there. Since going back and being signed by Copenhagen from Malmo, I think there's a lot of regret in the Malmo youth system, because it's clear that this guy is going to get a move this summer. There was talk about him potentially coming to the Premier League in January. His family were keen for that to happen, but wanted him loaned back to Copenhagen. They didn't want him to be sitting at a side where he wasn't going to play any games, and I think that's very, very crucial. The interviews I've read with him, he is 100% focused on game time over signing for a big club.
Mm-hmm.
So
sensible.
We've seen, heavy links to the likes of Manchester United. I don't think it's a realistic option, given that he wants to play plenty of game time, even if that means moving to a kind of stepping stone club, maybe a Borussia Dortmund or something like that. He also, I don't think he's the most natural fit for the Premier League. He's very, very much an individual star. Like his close control, his dribbling in close quarters, excellent. Shooting,
like a Ryan
excellent.
Shirky or someone.
Yeah, but his off-the-ball work, I think, still needs a little bit of work in there. And the Copenhagen manager has admitted as much this season. He's not the fastest in open play spaces. So, you know, how Manchester United want to play with this super fast transition game, counter-attacking game. We've seen how hasn't really suited a player like Antony, who's close control is kind of what his game's predicated on. And I worry a little bit that a player like Rooney would struggle in that element. But I think he will move to a big club this year. I don't think it'll be for more than £30 million either, because, you know, it's Copenhagen. I think they are aware of their status effectively, and sadly for them, they do get poached players, don't they? I mean, we've seen it with the likes of Højlund, who was in the same academy system, I think, as Roony Bardghji. I think they spent 6 months or so in the same academy system. I mean, if you play Football Manager at any stage over the last few years, you'll know who Roony Bardghji is, but I think this summer will be the time he gets his big move away from Copenhagen. I don't think it will be to one of Europe's sort of premier clubs, a PSG, a Real Madrid, Barcelona, a Man City. I think maybe a step below. And I don't necessarily think it will be England, even though that is where he wants to go. Like, quite publicly, he's talked about the Premier League being the best league in the world and how much he admires the football there. But we've also seen, you know, potential moves to France mooted, potential moves to Germany, where a lot of development has taken place. I think he sees those two leagues as key development leagues across Europe, which is true, because the amount of players that have gone to France subsequently moved on, the amount of players that have gone to a
like
Leipzig
Lille or something,
or a Borussia Dortmund subsequently moved on after proving themselves in the Champions League regularly, which he's actually been able to do this season. I think he sees that as a potential stepping stone. So I'm very interested to see what his future holds this summer, but I fully expect him to leave. And he is a very, very exciting talent. Like, he's just so fun to watch. So good to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything I've seen of him is super, super impressive. And you're probably right. I think there is a number of clubs that would probably look for a little bit of a spark. You know, a club like a Rennes or a Lille, or maybe even like an Atalanta, that level of club that are sort of in the Europa League, pushing for Champions League every year. I think that could be
maybe even
nice
a Dortmund man. Let's say the Jadon Sancho deal doesn't happen. You know, there are a lot of similarities in their game. Maybe he's not creative as Jadon Sancho, but in tight spaces, the dribbling, he's slightly more impactful in terms of his goal output. I think that if Sancho doesn't go back to Dortmund, which I fully expect he won't, because I don't think they're going to be able to afford what Man United want, I think like an option like Rooney might present itself on the table, and that's the sort of breeding ground they've dipped their toe into before. So
yeah, there are also reports that Marco Reus is going to leave Borussia Dortmund this summer, which
that'd be sad, wouldn't it?
Pretty crazy to think about, really, given how close he's been on a number of occasions to achieving something pretty special. But yeah, they might well be in the market for sort of attacking midfield or attacking talent. Right, I'm going to go on to my next one, who is definitely not a hidden gem. He's my least hidden out of all the gems I've found, but he's also very good for the thumbnail, to be honest. It's Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall. He has made over 120 appearances for Leicester, but I think you will understand what I mean by why he had to be included in this video, because I do think there's a potential bargain to
sub 30, you think?
Potentially to be struck here. No, I think it'll be maybe just over 30. But Leicester aren't in a great position. They posted losses of over £88 million for 22-23. I think it was over £90 million for the season before that. They are under PSR investigations. Those are actually losses, not PSR losses, if that makes sense, because they haven't taken into account the sort of stipulations you are allowed, like investment in facilities and investment in women's football and that sort of stuff. So that's not to say that they are that far over the limit, but they are being investigated. They might well have a points deduction coming their way from their Premier League time, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's from their Premier League season, isn't it? So it hasn't taken into account this EFL season, because they can't really be punished for Premier League breaches in the EFL because it's two separate corporations, isn't it? So it might well be if they go up, they will get punished, or next season they will come to some sort of agreement with the EFL, which will see them start on a minus points if they don't go up. So if they don't go up, they're going to have a fire sale. Yeah,
I mean, even in the last few years, they've sold Wesley Fofana, James Maddison, etc. But they had, I think, the biggest wage, except for the top six club, the biggest wages in the Premier League last year outside the top six, which is pretty crazy. And I was listening to Rob Dorset, the Sky Sports News Midlands reporter, senior reporter, but also specialises in Midlands football, and he was saying that basically their budget expected them to finish 8th, and they finished 18th. So they obviously had a bit of a stinker last year.
Horror.
And their season so far has taken a huge dip in form. You know, since Christmas, I think they are 10th in the league for points won. I think they've got 16 fewer than Leeds. They are still top of the league on goal difference ahead of Ipswich, but Leeds are just 1 point behind. And Leeds at the moment are on for 95 points this season, which would be the best ever tally for a side finishing third in the Championship.
I think they do have a game in hand, though. They do have a game in hand, so they could go, I think, 4 points clear. You'll be watching this, and that will have happened or won't have happened, because obviously this is going out on Sunday, so they might now be third. Leicester, it's hard to tell.
It's crazy tight, but my point is, whoever finishes third in this league will have a record points tally for a side finishing third. And the last side to finish third with a record points tally was Brighton in the middle part of the last decade, and they ended up being knocked out in the semi-finals. So it is easily possible that a side could finish with more than 90 points, finish third, and not make the playoff final, which is pretty horrible to think about. But Dewsbury-Hall's obviously done his part to make sure they are there. He's been absolutely exceptional. But it has been a little bit of an up and down time at Leicester. You know, he joined as an 8-year-old, struggled for game time, went to Blackpool in League One, then went to Luton in the Championship, had that great year at Luton, then 2 years really as a regular in the Premier League. His final year there was pretty exceptional, but was slightly outshone by James Maddison. He's obviously a little bit ahead of him in his development. But this year, he's played as a defensive midfielder, he's played as a central midfielder, and he's played a little bit further forward as well. 12 goals and 13 assists in 40 games.
It's crazy.
Absolutely remarkable stuff. I mean, only Adam Armstrong, Morgan Whittaker and Sammy Smodics have been involved in more goals in the Championship, which, given the fact that he has played a little bit deeper, is pretty remarkable. And in terms of assists, he's third in the league, chances created fifth, passes into the penalty area second, shot creating actions he's fifth, progressive carries second. This is an amazing dribbler of the ball. And actually, often when I watch him, you do notice how the fact that he slows down at the right moment and always his way to the pass, even if he's done a 20-yard run up the field, is always spot on. Really nicely two-footed as well, but is obviously a left-footer as well, which I always think adds a little something to a potential move as well. And as I say, Leicester aren't guaranteed to go up. I think they'll need to sell if they don't. And Dewsbury-Hall could be snapped up for an absolute bargain. There's been links with Spurs, which, to be honest, I can see, because it feels like Højbjerg's time at the club is coming to an end. Not sure about the future of Giovanni Lo Celso as well. Brighton had a bid rejected for him in January, and his form hasn't been as good in the second half of the season as the first half of the season, but he's still probably in the running for Championship Player of the Year, and definitely is ready to play for a top-tier side somewhere.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said as well for the calibre of players coming out of the Championship and easily being able to assimilate with the Premier League. Seen it in recent years, haven't you, with the likes of Jared Bowen going back a few years now, more recently Eberechi Eze, and then since January really the emergence of Adam Wharton, who's come from Blackburn, who haven't been having an outstanding Championship season, I think, if we're honest with ourselves. And, you know, he started 22 games down there, Adam Wharton, has come into the Premier League and looks like Crystal Palace's best central midfielder. He looks
brilliant
ready
at the weekend against City, wasn't
immediately. He's going to be an England international, I think, Adam Wharton. I think what that proves is that players that have been outstanding in the Championship and are visibly ready to step into the Premier League can do it. Yep. They can do it. I think Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall has pedigree in the Premier League. He's proven that he's way too good for the Championship, frankly, and there's going to be a host of clubs interested in him. And I even think your point about the financial issues is a very valid one. Like, they can say, oh, we want 40 million or pounds or whatever it was in the end they wanted off of Brighton for Brighton to reject it. But when PSR bites this summer and the numbers start to get crunched, that number's surely going to have to drop. Yeah. This club's going to be interested in him. I'm convinced about that. I think Newcastle would also be quite a nice fit. Another ball-carrying central midfielder in there. The amount of midfield injuries and issues they've had this season, although they do have Tonali returning halfway through next season,
I think it's early August.
Early August, yeah. So I definitely think Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall is going to be playing Premier League football.
I feel like every year there's one player that just doesn't look like they belong in the Championship at all. And this year, I mean, there's a few candidates this year, but Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall is that guy for me. You also look at how well Victor Gyökeres has done going abroad from the Championship. Like, the Championship has got some seriously talented players in it, and I think Dewsbury-Hall is the number one for me this year.
Yeah, I can see him moving. All right, let's go to my next one. I'm going to bring up Kévin Denkey here.
Joe, I love it. You've gone deep in this.
Well, I don't know how deep this is. This is a 23-year-old who plays for Cercle Brugge. Now, we all know Club Brugge. Cercle Brugge are like the Bruges rivals that obviously play at the same stadium as Club Brugge.
Share a ground? I didn't know.
So they obviously hate each other. And Denkey has smashed it this season. Like, as an emerging player, he was signed from Nîmes, I think, who are now, like, you know, once upon a time, a stock Ligue 1 outfit. Now, I think, a 19th in Ligue 2.
Wow.
So, sad times for them, but good time for Denkey to exit the club. He's going from strength to strength, really, in the Belgian Pro League. And we've seen the Belgian Pro League in recent years produce some really, really fine players.
Absolutely.
And Denkey is probably the cream of the crop right now in Belgium. He's 23 years old, so he's not quite as young as some of the names we've got on this list. But he feels very much ready for a move to, or back to, I should say, one of the top 5 leagues. Because, of course, he has had very, very scarce minutes in Liga. Like, I think we're talking when he was 18, 19, 10, 15 minutes here or there. But this season, just absolutely exceptional. Like 23 goals in 28 starts, playing up front, but he can also play off the right, he can play off the left. He loves to dribble with the ball, an amazing ball carrier, but he's also really good at the hold-up play. 6 foot tall, very, very stocky. He reminds me a little bit of like a Victor Boniface just before he got his move to Leverkusen. You know, there was a lot of talk, wasn't there, about clubs being interested in Boniface, who's going to get him, and it felt like that sort of next tier down. Not a Bayern Munich, not a PSG, but a Leverkusen, a Dortmund. We're going to pick him up, and that's exactly what happened in Boniface, and I think the same chat is starting to happen here. Apparently, Sporting are very, very interested in him and have been like talking to his agent, and discussions have been underway since about January.
I suppose expecting Gyökeres to potentially leave.
To take him to Portugal. Presumably that is predicated on Gyökeres leaving, and I saw some quotes from Gyökeres' agent this week which basically were like, if Ruben Amorim goes, then we're out, which isn't a great sign for Sporting, but they're going to cash in like nobody's business, aren't they? Take 100 mil for him, and then potentially go and stick it on a player like Denkey, who has had such a good season, so well-rounded, not as physical as Gyökeres, but much faster, much like more of a dribbler in and around tight spaces. You know, Gyökeres uses his physicality in his frame very well, doesn't he? And creates really nicely because of it. But Denkey's a different kind of player. But when you watch him, he's very hard to stop. He's that sort of pit bull, low frame, like knocking people out of the way. Finishes really nicely off of both feet. So I think he could be the next guy out of the Belgian Pro League. I don't think he's going to spend another season there, frankly. There's so many players that have exited the Pro League, the Jupiler, recently and been a success, that I don't think he's going to be there for another season. It's an unrealistic thought when, you know, Cercle Brugge, I think, are 5th. It's not like they're going to be a Champions League side or
no, absolutely not. Boniface, Cossanu, of course, Noah Lang as well, coming through Belgium recently. The guy Brentford have just signed, Thiago, as well, to replace Tony. Yeah, there's big things expected out of players that come out of Belgium, and they've generally adapted pretty seamlessly as well.
Keep your eyes on him going to Sporting. Or Tottenham were also interested. There was also reports of Tottenham being very interested in him.
Shopping in the same markets as Football Daily.
Well, they were sort of shopping in the Gift Orban market, weren't they, for a while, Spurs? And then Gift Orban went to Lyon. And so maybe they're now thinking, it's that on Gift. Who's the next one up?
The next one, okay, I like it. Right, my penultimate one is Edon Zhegrova. Now,
this is a crazy shout.
Why? You don't like him?
I've never heard of him.
Oh, okay. He's an interesting player, to be honest. If you watch a lot of Liga, you would know about him. He's, you know, very, very exciting. Left-footed right winger. Kosovan-born, Kosovan international, but born in Germany, which I'll get onto in due course, which could be potentially interesting. So when he was a young boy, Milan ran a camp in Kosovo to find the most talented footballer. He won it, but didn't end up signing for Milan. Don't know what went wrong there. He joined Standard Liège's academy, but he actually got his breakthrough with Genk, got 5 goals and 3 assists as a youngster in one season, then moved to FC Basel, Calafiori that I was talking about earlier. They are quite good at signing very talented young players that haven't quite made the grade at their own club as well. Played really well at FC Basel and then signed for Lille in January 2022, who were then under Jocelyn Gourvenec as well, who was the coach in between. I can't remember who he's in between, but it was Prata, Paulo Fonseca. He was very much like a stopgap. And his minutes have grown every season, about 500 in the first 6 months, about 1,000 last year, now at nearly 2,000. 10 league goals and assists this year. Really, really exciting player to watch. Just so much fun. So much fun. Dribbling in tight spaces, flair. There's a certain... He's not as fast as Eden Hazard, but there's a certain Eden Hazard joie de vivre about the way he plays and the flicks.
Joie de vivre. Here we go.
The flicks, the tricks. I'm getting into my French, man. I have been doing Duolingo Spanish, actually, so maybe I'll drop a bit of that. Sorry?
What's your streak?
16 days so far.
Wow, it's low numbers, man.
What are you on?
I'm not on Duolingo, but I know FIFA are on like 500-day streaks, and they still can't speak it.
I've only just started, but I did do it at school. Anyway, I'm getting slightly sidetracked here, but my dream one day is to drop a bit of Spanish into Sunday Vibes, and you guys don't even notice, and you just say, yeah, he speaks Spanish fluently. Anyway, let's get back to Zhegrova and getting distracted. He's a crucial member of Fonseca's squad this season. I think he's about 5th for league minutes in that time. Only Jonathan David, who's had a really good bounce back year, has been indirectly involved in more league goals as well. And Lille are on the charge. They're 4th in Liga, but they're unbeaten in their last 5. In that run, they've beaten Reims, they've beaten Lens, they beat Marseille on Monday, I think 3-1, really effectively. They're now just 4 points behind second place Brest. Aston Villa fans.
Big game tonight.
Huge game. You would have seen what they could do tonight. I back them to spring a... Maybe don't necessarily beat Villa, but I think they'll cause them some serious issues. And in the French league, he stands out. I mean, he's 7th for dribbles completed in the entirety of Europe. That's level with Florian Wirtz. That's ahead of players like Kingsley Coman. I think he's a really, really exciting player, and his expected assist tally has grown year on year. This year it's about 0.3, which is very, very solid. An assist every 3 games. He's only got 2 years remaining on his current contract. He's valued at 15 million euros, so he's well underneath the budget for this one. RB Leipzig were looking at him in January, and it feels like with Xavi Simons at least temporarily or permanently going back to PSG
and Dani Olmo's
in the summer.
off, isn't he?
Dani Olmo potentially leaving as well. Got a very cheap release clause. Now back playing excellent football again. Such a good footballer, Dani Olmo. You know, a guy Zhegrova who was born in Germany, moved to Leipzig makes, I think, a lot of sense, to be honest. Left-footed right winger, just like Dani Olmo. A lot of quality in attacking areas. Maybe had not had the explosion to be known in the wider sort of footballing world, but a lot of French supporters and fans are really impressed with his work at Lille this year.
Yeah, I mean, we'll stick on the topic of Lille, because I've got a Lille player as well.
Nice.
I think there were so many options we could have picked from Lille. You know, frankly, we could have taken Jonathan David as well, couldn't we? Like you said, amazing bounce back year. I was really tempted to talk about Angel Gomez, who has been putting up fantastic numbers yet again.
Fonseca said he was the most intelligent player in his squad. Yeah,
playing in a multitude of positions as well. He's been able to play as a defensive midfielder, more recently in that sort of attacking area, putting up just fantastic ball-playing numbers. He's so comfortable in possession, isn't he? We've seen that. You know, we saw that through the Manchester United Youth Academy, and since he's kind of grown into his body a little bit more, definitely in France. But I'm going to talk about what I think is the jewel in the Lille crown, a player that really shouldn't qualify for this, even though his market value is sub 30. We're talking about a massive fee this summer. It's Leny Yoro, who I think, you know, is probably going to go to Real Madrid. Still only 18 years old, which is a frightening thought. This is obviously one of the primo centre-backs in Europe. Every top club wants to sign him this coming summer. You know, you said then physically developed, 6'3" already, knows how to use his body, but there is a certain Rafa Varane about him. He's quite thin as a 6'3" player, but he's also very strong on the ball. I think he is better on the ball than Varane. Varane never classically for me has been that comfortable on the ball. Even though his numbers aren't that bad, he looks a bit unnatural in possession.
It's definitely not very aesthetically pleasing, is it?
I don't think so. Whereas Leny Yoro, totally different. Very, very aesthetically pleasing, very comfortable on the ball, rolls into the midfield, super quick, super intelligent, and for an 18-year-old, immensely mature. I think Fonseca, when he arrived at the club, brought him straight into his first team when he was 16, Leny Yoro, in 2022, and said, I've never met a more mature 16-year-old in my life. He has immediately, like throughout the last 18 months, become a key component to Fonseca's side. He's so vital to how they want to play football, how they want to build up from the back. His composure on the ball, combined with the physicality, the speed, the height, make him a nightmare in both boxes. Good from corners, good at defending corners. And yeah, we've seen Real Madrid highly interested in him, to the point of, you know, potential offers being made. Now, Lille have, in an Athletic article I read today, kind of quoted 100 million euros for Leny Yoro, which I think personally it's not a laughable amount, but I just think the idea that they take 100 million euros off of Real Madrid is kind of farcical. But what I will say is, like, another example of Madrid
one step ahead.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
what sort of building this future dynasty project out with the likes of Endrick arriving, obviously Kylian Mbappe, a young Jude Bellingham, young Tchouaméni, young Camavinga. I think this is a real concern. If they manage to get Leny Yoro over the line, given that you look at that centre-back roster that Madrid have right now, and you think Nacho is quite a weak link, isn't getting any younger. Rudiger and Alaba seriously injured and has been very injury-prone throughout his career. So who do they turn to partner Militao if those guys aren't going to be the next ones up? And if it is Leny Yoro, you think Militao and Leny Yoro with Alphonso Davies and potentially a new right-back alongside him.
Trent.
Oh my good God, it's a big problem. It is a big problem. So I think personally he's going to go to Madrid, so it feels a little bit unfair to talk about him as a hidden gem because everybody in Europe wants him. But this is a little academy who's produced the likes of Eden Hazard you talked about, Franck Ribéry, Yohan Cabaye. I think people at top clubs aren't afraid to buy from them because of that. They know the calibre of player they can produce. And yeah, he's just got it all, and you can see it already. Like, he's just frighteningly good for 18, and you never see 18-year-old centre-backs. Like, you can see 18-year-old forwards who pop up, score goals, and get into form. It's much harder to be a young centre-back than it is to be a young forward. Absolutely, yeah.
And you look at their history of selling as well. They are, they have made amazing returns on players like Rafa Leao and Victor Osimhen as well. But they do eventually get over the line in terms of selling. Like, it's crucial to their business model to sell these players. But obviously they're going to go as high as they want with that first valuation. But yeah, 100 million euros.
You're going to rinse him though.
I mean, the similarities when Varane joining Real Madrid from Lens are just so similar. I think he was 18, 19.
He was 18, yeah.
And what he did about a year as a backup to Pepe, and then sort of quickly replaced him, and just that Ramos-Varane partnership just went absolutely supernova. Right, final one from me is Chris Fuhrich of Stuttgart. Now, a few players that I've mentioned here with Calafiori and Zhegrova have kind of had a little bit of a seesawing career, early part of their career, and Fuhrich is similar to that. He's not a wonder kid by any stretch. He's 26, but he has had an interesting time of it. He came through at Dortmund, but he didn't really... Well, he came through at Cologne, then Dortmund, but only ever played for Dortmund's second team, then moved to Paderborn in the Bundesliga 2 in 2021, so relatively recently. And he must have been, 23? And responded with 13 goals and 7 assists in the Bundesliga 2. Stuttgart pick him up, and Stuttgart for the 2 seasons prior to this have been battling relegation every year, and he's looked solid, but not necessarily someone that was getting calls up to Germany, which he has now. He's got 3 caps for Germany, not necessarily being talked about in terms of big moves, but this season Stuttgart have just gone to a completely new level. They've got Serhou Guirassy, who's just proven to be not a flash in the pan in terms of everyone just thought it was 6 months. He's still banging in the goals. I think it's only Kane that's scored more goals than them.
Still got that £12 million buyout clause.
Absolutely ridiculous. And they've already got their backup ready-made there in Dennis Undav, who I'm sure they'll sign permanently from Brighton.
I did see De Zerbi talking about he's going to come back in the summer.
Interesting.
So I think that they might face a bit of a battle there, and I think if they want to keep him, they're going to have to probably pay.
Yeah. That is interesting. I mean, but Fuhrich has been a crucial part. He's the sort of left-sided forward. He can also play centrally. He's ended up with 7 goals and 7 assists in the league. He's not got incredible pace. He's not really an acceleration merchant in that sort of winger style. But in terms of his close control, his eye for a pass, his understanding of when to release a pass, etc., I think he's really, really up there, to be honest. And his transfer market valuation has gone from €4 million at the start of this season to now 25. Get him while you can, guys. They extended his contract in February till 2028. So again, I think he'll cost more than £30 million, to be honest, this summer. But as I said, now called up to the national team, performing really, really well for Stuttgart. It just feels like he's got another level to go to, and another level to go to soon. He's been linked with Dortmund. He's been linked with Bayern. I don't really want to see him go to Bayern, to be totally honest. You look at what's happened to Brian Zaragoza, who joined from Granada.
It's going out on loan in the summer, isn't it?
Yeah, and it just doesn't feel like there was some miscommunication in terms of whether Tuchel wanted him, because he just hasn't had any minutes whatsoever. So I don't want him to go to Bayern just yet. He's been linked with West Ham. Obviously, Tim Steedton, their sporting director, used to be at Bayer Leverkusen. He'll have great contacts in Germany. I think that's a reasonably exciting move, but then they've got Kudus, they've got Bowen. Yeah, I mean, would he start there necessarily? Maybe it is that Dortmund move if Sancho doesn't go permanently, if Royce moves on. But Chris Fuhrich, I think he's got a really good chance of making the Euro squad, and if he gets minutes off the bench as well, I think he can cause some damage in the Euros.
Yeah, that's a nice shout. My last suggestion, I really wanted to talk about Archie Gray, but I just don't feel like
Ellis Platten's favourite.
I don't feel like it's fair to put him in this category because he's such a blockbuster talent that he signed a new contract in 2024. He's going to go in for an excess of the £30 million fee. Look, if they stay in the Championship, they're going to really struggle to keep hold of him because he is outrageous. Archie Gray, the things he's doing, being asked to play as a right back in this system, the things he was able to do in the midfield, his leadership, what he's shown for the under-21s, and that goal coming straight in there, but then also playing as a right back against Luxembourg. I think Archie Gray is a scary, scary talent, but I don't think he would cost less than £30 million. So I've shifted it up, and I've actually gone for Teden Mengi at Luton, who I think are going to go down. Luton, I want them to stay in the Premier League, and despite the Everton points deduction,
Forest just having more quality in attacking areas.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I think that Forest have got better quality in pretty much every area. I think that Nuno will have enough to get them over the line, as dysfunctional as they've been. Luton, when I watch them, feel like they are scraping and scrapping and clawing to stay in the league, and fair play to them. I really hope they do, but I've just got a gut feeling all three of the promoted sides are going to go straight back down.
Luton have got really difficult away games as well. They've got City, West Ham and Wolves, I think.
Yeah. And look, the defensive record's been horrible, hasn't it? I think they've conceded 67 at the time of recording. By far the worst expected goals against in the league, worse than Sheffield United. So to talk about Luton centre-back, some people might be laughing at me here, but I think that Teden Mengi has maybe been their outstanding player outside of Alfie Doherty and Ross Barkley, who are both having fantastic seasons. The Barkley remontada is one of my favourite I've ever seen in the league, I think, and Alfie Doherty is probably going to get snapped up by a much more sizable club than Luton, no offence, but I also think Teden Mengi will as well. He's proved to be extremely reliable, very calm and composed on the ball, but also he just loves defending. He loves sticking his body in, winning duels. I think it's upwards of 4 tackles and interceptions per 90 this season, which is massive for a centre-back. Massive volume of clearances and blocks in there as well. He's an absolute warrior. He is a warrior out on the pitch. He's also got that sort of big club pedigree, having come through the Manchester United Youth Academy, not getting his chances and having those terrible injuries, I think on loan at Derby, Birmingham, and then when he came back to Manchester United, just had no luck with injuries. So he's kind of restarted his career down in Luton, and he's done brilliantly down there. We saw in the January window that Bayer Leverkusen tried to sign him. That deal didn't happen in the end. I think if Luton go down, I fully expect Leverkusen to come back in. They've shown a willingness to dip into and take players that have smashed it in the Championship before. We saw Nathan Teller go to Leverkusen, done really, really well. Mainly, not necessarily as the guy, but as a serious impact squad player. Nathan Teller's a fantastic season. I think that Leverkusen are extremely smart in their recruitment. There's a reason they wanted Mengi in January. I think if he doesn't go there, then there'll be a lot of Premier League clubs interested in him. I mooted him the other day on my own channel for Fulham. Fulham, actually, because obviously Tosin Adarabioyo leaving the club. Maybe they need to sign another sort of younger centre-back. And I think Tosin would be a really nice fit in there. Lots of development still to happen in his career. I just don't think Luton are the type of club that are going to be like, we want 50 million. No. I think they are aware of their financial situation and where they sit in the league. And one of the reasons Teden Mengi has joined them is to prove himself as a Premier League defender and then potentially move on as a stepping stone. So I think Mengi potentially leaves in the summer, and I think Luton fans, if you ask any of them, cannot talk highly enough about him. He's been amazing. Lovely stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I talked about Luton's fixtures. I think Forest's final 3 games are Sheffield United, Burnley and Chelsea, who are obviously not in the best moment themselves. So it does feel like Forest have the real advantage.
Never say never with this Luton team, though. Never say never.
It felt like a couple of months ago they had that amazing period where they're losing by like 1 goal to like Arsenal and City, and I think they got that draw with Liverpool and United, and it felt like, Luton, they've kind of clicked in this league, but they just fell off at just the wrong point, really. Although they did get that huge win against Bournemouth last weekend. Before we wrap up, Joe, because this has actually been quite a speedy episode, just wanted to ask you a couple of specific questions about the Champions League, because everyone want to know our opinion. Let's talk about the controversial moments in Arsenal versus Bayern Munich. Thoughts on both penalty calls?
I think that both were correct. I think that Sane, no doubt, gets fouled by William Saliba. I think there's very, very clear contact there. I think Saliba just mistimed his tackle, to be honest with you. We should really talk about 3 penalty incidents in that game.
The second one was actually not the one you were just talking about. I actually meant the Gabriel handball.
The Gabriel handball's handball.
Yeah.
We've all seen the clip. He the referee blows his whistle. It's passed. Gabriel picks what's a penalty.
I don't really get it. Some people are like, you're a nerd if you want that to be a penalty. It's also
a penalty.
just the rules.
It's a penalty all day, every day. If you think it's not a penalty, you're an Arsenal fan.
Yeah.
I think the Saka penalty.
Good call from the ref, I think.
I think it's a good call. It's
very tight.
Massive bottle from the referee not to give that as the penalty. But I do think he dangles his leg right. I think on the first angle you see, it looks quite a penalty. On the reverse angle, I think it's clear that Saka kind of throws his leg sideways into Neuer, although Neuer is kind of extending as well. I think either way, whatever the on-field decision would have been upheld by VAR. If he'd been given a penalty in that moment, I think it would have been upheld as well because there is clear contact. But for me, Saka extends his leg and kicks out at Neuer, then goes down, which I don't really understand why, because it's just tapping it into an empty net there. Slightly bizarre. But I thought that game was great. Super watchable. Bayern Munich, have to say, looked much more dangerous than I was expecting. I thought that they were in such a period of flux and the form was so bad. The result against Heidenheim at the weekend was so horrible that, to be honest with you, Arsenal were going to roll them over. But as they seem to prove most years, pedigree, size of the club, they play up to the opposition. And with people like Manuel Neuer in the side, I actually thought Conrad Lime was excellent as well with his energy.
Goretzka had a really good game.
Leroy Sané, who just, has had a bit of a fluctuating season, just looked a world beater. Like, impossible to defend against in the 1v1.
Yeah, that Kévin just completely losing him, and then Declan Rice jumping out. Thierry Henry did a really good piece of analysis actually on Declan Rice jumping out a little too early. Goretzka runs off the back of him and then plays that amazing pass through to Serge Gnabry at such amazing pace.
Arsenal still have a chance. Arsenal still have a big chance away in Munich. Their record's not been great there.
No, I do think Bayern score in Munich though, especially with their own fans being there. That was another thing as well. I think the level that Arsenal played at to not have an advantage going there. Like, I thought they were really, really good, particularly for the first 30 minutes. There was a bit of a gap between 35 and about 70 when they started making the subs, but great impact from Gabriel Jesus and Trossard as well. But such un-Arsenal-like errors, really defensively. Yeah, it was a shame, to be honest, because I did think they played really, really well. But that's the level we're talking about. You're playing against the side with still the best attack in Europe, despite the fact they played 28 league games compared to 31, 32 in the Prem. Yeah, an amazing sort of attack stills. That attacking quality is absolutely brilliant. Real Madrid versus Man City. I was actually watching the other game, but everyone in the chat was like, "This is a missed opportunity from Real Madrid." Do
you know what? Man City looked vulnerable to the Real Madrid counter. Like, we thought going in that was going to be the case because Man City do play a high line. No Walker, Vinicius Jr., Rodrigo, danger on the counter attack. What Madrid showed was like a counter-attack to a whole new level. Like, the speed of their players, the physicality of their players, exceptional. I think they missed a big opportunity there because I just don't see any world in which they are able to win at the Etihad. To be honest with you, I think without Tchouaméni, who's of course suspended for the second leg, replacing him with Nacho, I think it was a big missed opportunity there. And obviously there were wonder goals all across the game, and I'm sure Madrid will be disappointed to concede the Foden and Gvardiol goals and the Bernardo Silva one, which Lunin, Courtois doesn't let in, does he? Let's be honest. But I just think that they'll lose at the Etihad. I don't see them going there and getting a result, despite the fact they were so frightening on the counter-attack. Rodrigo, again, just proving that he's so underrated. And Valverde, the most underrated footballer in Europe. I think, nobody talks about him, do they? When we talk about Madrid's midfield, we're all going, Tchouaméni and Camavinga in there, Modric and Kroos. And then you're like, and don't forget Valverde. Valverde's a joke.
That finish.
His ball striking is outrageous. His athleticism is off the scale. Like, fantastic player, absolute fantastic player. But it's just such a big missed opportunity for Madrid because Man City weren't at their best. KDB, obviously, this sort of mystery illness where he was vomiting pre-game and they'd planned for him to play and he didn't. I thought Phil Foden in the first half was a long way off his best. And so I think Pep Guardiola kind of came out and said as much afterwards, didn't he? Even Rodri kind of said, I'm just so tired, I'm just shattered.
Rodri said he wants a break.
Yeah, and I think they probably got Luton this weekend, haven't they? They're going to have to figure out a way of,
heavily rotating,
giving him a break. And surely that was the point of, the £60 million purchase of Mateus Nunes, even though he's not a defensive midfielder. Was he not bought in so he could rotate?
Well, all Calvin Phillips to play any minutes at all before he left as well. Like, it just feels like they haven't you really monitored Rodri, because he's obviously missed some games through suspension, but it's now just been.
But without Walker, City will be the lie with that result, man. 3 goals away at the Bernabeu. I think as long as
without away goals, I don't know. Also,
Madrid aren't going to beat him at the Etihad.
Real Madrid will come. No, they're probably not. I mean, I think they conceded 13 goals in the last 4 visits there. But it was just such a huge opportunity as well. Also, the fact they'd had a 9-day break since their previous game, because there was no Spanish football last weekend because it was the Copa del Rey final, and they always try and give that as much sort of airtime as possible.
They've conceded 1 in their last 5 at the Bernabeu as well. They had the roof on. I think they put out that message, didn't they, saying, "Can everybody please wear white?" It was like, oh, here we go, Madrid. It's that doom factor of going to the Bernabeu, and Madrid Man City kind of overcame it to a level.
I mean, what was quite a big factor last year was Rudiger was dropped for the second leg, actually, surprisingly, at the Etihad, and they got absolutely torn apart. Whereas he was
that won't happen this year.
His best.
He handled Haaland.
He really did. I mean, that's his second consecutive amazing game against Haaland. And briefly, let's touch on the other side of the draw. Are you seeing an all Spanish other side? Atleti Barca?
Absolutely. I think Atletico's home record is obviously so imperious in the knockout stages of the Champions League.
Never lost in a knockout game.
I think that they will breeze past Borussia Dortmund in that second leg. I don't see Dortmund scoring 3 goals. And as for PSG Barca, I was expecting PSG to cause them more problems.
No, because they only need 2. They only need. Dortmund was 2-1, so they only need 2 goals.
Oh yeah, true.
But still, it is a big ask.
Big arse though still. And then as for PSG versus Barca, I thought Mbappe and Dembele would cause that backline some problems. They just didn't. Like the midfield for me at PSG, Vitinha's a nice player, and I think he played okay last night. And Fabian Ruiz a fairly nice player. Like, I just don't think they are of the caliber to win the Champions League. That midfield.
Zaire Emery will hopefully be fit.
Zaire Emery has to be fit. They can't even question that. And it just comes down to, for me, every single year the same thing for PSG. The same thing happens in that the domestic division is so uncompetitive that they take their foot off the gas for the last 2 months of the season. It's such a easy sort of run they go on. They're 10 points clear, and they're drawing games for fun in the division. It comes to a game on a big night, big occasion, and it hits them like a ton of bricks. It's like, what is this? Like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, it's because they don't have any competitive level in their domestic division.
Yeah, and we were talking about it talking a bit about it over a chicken massaman at lunch. Like Luis Enrique's decision to sort of take Mbappe off at 60 minutes, 45 minutes in the last 2 months. It might well backfire. He looked well short of his best last night. You can put that down to Mbappe just having an off night, but did he have enough game time coming into this as well? He did look really, really shackled pretty effectively from Jules Koundé, who's had a difficult second season at Barcelona, but was excellent in his first, and then Kubasi as well.
Ooh, yeah, crazy.
What a talent have they discovered.
He's got an £8 million buyout clause, Kubasi.
That
contract has still not been signed. Obviously, it's on the table. I think it's going to be signed. But as we stand today, Barca is such a mess behind the scenes. You never know, frankly, do you? You never know. And I'm sure it will, and that £1 billion buyout clause will get inserted. But as we stand today, I think it's £8 million.
Xavi said something like, I'm paraphrasing slightly, but he said something like he's the most comfortable on-the-ball centre-back I've ever seen at Barcelona, which, considering he's played with peak PK, that's quite a statement.
Yeah, it's a big statement. All right, that's it for today's episode of Sunday Vibes. Of course, Europa League action happens tonight, so let us know what you think of that in the comments below, and let us know any hidden gems you've got for under £30 million. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, hit subscribe. We'll see you later. Goodbye.